Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. We're helping non-techs build better tech. Today we're joined by Kate Tiller, who's the Chief Brand Officer of Perfect Space. Kate, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, can you just a bit of background about who you are and how you sort of came about what a Perfect Space is, really?
Yeah, sure. So a Perfect Space is a marketplace to connect producers and content creators with locations and to shorten the time it takes to find and book a space. My background is advertising since I left high school or since I left university. So advertising and media. I went from brand side to media side to sales side. And so for the past 20 years, that was the first part of my career. And then the past 20 years, I've run my own business. So I had my own ad agency in Sydney. And then I started my startup journey about 8 years ago. And I started a tech company. Well, it was a website for sharing recipes called Love to Share Food. And then we built a television show around that. So the reason that A Perfect Space was born was during the creation of that TV series, which we only built the TV show because we ran out of money building the technology. And the TV show was so successful, it crashed the tech. And I had to find 13 kitchens in 2 weeks in regional Victoria that had to have a different style and a different aesthetic. And that nearly killed me. Making the TV show was easy compared to finding locations. So that was the initial come to Jesus moment. And then I had a property in the mountains, and so soon after that, 6 months later, I had a property that was being rented out and I needed content creative for that, and I had a contact from a blogger in Sydney, really high-profile blogger, and we did a deal and I said, you can have it, I want this. So I wrote a brief because my background's creating content. Told her what I wanted. So 8 months later, I got the content, threw it in the bin the minute I got it. They broke my lamp. They turned up 10 hours late. They didn't provide me what they said they were going to provide me, and it ended up costing me money. So I was driving down the mountain and I'm thinking there's got to be a better way to find locations. So that's the genesis of the idea. And since then, it's been quite the journey. It's nearly 4 years, which is a long time in startup world, I realise. But it's been, we're solving a big problem and we are disrupting. I know that's thrown around a lot, but in our instance, I've taken this around America and Australia, and we're solving a big problem, and it's challenging, really challenging.
Is it challenging? Oh, okay, Andrew. I was going to say, is it challenging because you're trying to break the norms of what people are doing at the moment?
Oh, that's good. That's a really, really good point, Anthony. That's exactly right. So I kind of liken it a little bit to Ubers in the taxi industry, that, when you're entering an industry that's quite, it's been around forever, the traditional way and process that's been undertaken to find locations has never changed, and that's universal globally. So, whether it be film or an event or a wedding venue or a photo shoot location, the same challenge exists all the way through, and it's excruciatingly manual, to the point where, the first job that I did, which was with an international brand, Montclair, out of New York, they had 30 crew flying in from New York. They booked it off a website because they needed to come to the snow, and there was no snow left, and they've literally flown in, picked up a photographer from Sydney, picked up a crew from Sydney who'd never been to Victoria, and landed on the mountain where there was only a tiny bit of snow left down at the bottom of the mountain. And I'm like, so that was probably 200 hours of work, logistics, catering, location scouting, transporting, housing. It was just monumental, but it was really interesting because it was a lot of money involved. And I looked at it and thought, God, there's got to be a more fluid, pragmatic, practical way of enabling people to scout and shortlist without making that journey and making all those errors and wasting clients' money.
What do you think the basically book something in and fly down here without doing the scouting? Is it just because the content's not available? It's not knowing the area? What is the challenge there?
In this instance, to be honest with you, I think they've got too much money. I just think they weren't thinking about it because they'd done Val d'Isere the year prior and they decided to do. I think they were just late on their content and they went, oh, yeah, we'd love to go to Australia. And they were young, digital team. And I was just, it was mind-blowing. It was an amazing campaign, by the way. And then when we got all the PR on it, they rebranded us as Val d'Isere. They didn't credit Australia. So it was actually even more ridiculous than it seemed. But, it's just, look, that was an extreme example. But I've also got other examples where, the client, we've got a couple of clients in Sydney that are looking for a specific kitchen. By the time you go through Google, Airbnb, stays, you ring people, you go on realestate.com, you're talking hours. And then what I discovered really early, I'm a big researcher and I put a lot of effort into testing and trialing and researching. And what I discovered was the information on a real estate listing or an Airbnb listing doesn't give a producer the information they need logistically. It gives you bedrooms and bathrooms, it gives you air conditioning, but it doesn't give you the detailed logistical information that's relevant to a producer, i.e. how far from the CBD or how wide is the kitchen bench, how accessible is it for a boom operator to come in. So we've really built our product around that.
It's very different
on the listing if it's a low ceiling.
Really different listing. And meanwhile, the other thing that I really noted early on was I kind of assumed that, people who are doing an Airbnb would just share their photos over. But what I discovered was a lot of the professional photos that are used on these types of listing websites we don't want to use because they've got fishbowl lenses or they're overexposed or they're not really showcasing the authenticity of a location. So we don't want, we don't want really dark photos or photos that are blurred or whatever, but we also don't want professional overcooked photos that are not going to give a true depiction of that particular space, because what we want a producer to do is click on our website and literally in, 3 minutes, they would be able to shortlist, they can click on a video, they can look at additional content, they can logistically decide whether that location fits their brief without going out there, without making a phone call. And at the moment, that doesn't exist.
I find it's a fascinating problem, yeah. So I can get the issue too, because where is this content kept? I understand that locations are everywhere, and if you're not aware of them, especially from the other side of the world, it'd be very difficult, wouldn't it?
It is really difficult. And the other interesting thing is, we've pulled back, we've pivoted a bit since COVID, so we're now focusing heavily on the Australian market. 70% of production is done in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. So I'm a Melbourne girl and I'm really, really passionate about regional Australia. So involved with the bushfires, family have been involved in regional Australia forever. We've got farms, so I'm big on regional. So the biggest challenge is promoting Australia to the rest of the world. So whether it be Hollywood or the UK or India, there are so many productions coming in here. One, because we have diversity of location and diversity of landscape. But two, we have great crews, great unions. We're an easy market for people to relocate to. And COVID-wise, we're a bit safer than the rest of the world, yeah?
A lot safer right about now. If they can actually get into Australia, that's another thing.
Anywhere, but we're still
yes.
But it's interesting because if you think about this, and this is the challenge I'm trying to solve at the moment, if you want to pitch a movie or you want to come to Australia and you've never been here before and you want to film an Iraqi war, sand dunes, with, an explosion in a mine type thing. How do you find that? You can't. There is
a lot of Googling.
A lot of Googling and a lot of old imagery, outdated imagery. It's difficult, right? So what we're building now is we're going to roll out around regional Australia. We're going to go by market, and we're going to give access through a SaaS to members that can identify, they want a mountain range with gum trees, or they want an island atoll around smaller islands with turtles, whatever it might be. We will gather and create that library, and then we will market that library as well as the local freelancers available to work in those crews, which doesn't exist at the moment. There are many different areas you can book these freelance crews from, but you cannot do it centrally. And if you think about it, location is the hero of every story. That's kind of our tagline, yeah? So if you're going to Northern Queensland, there's no point booking me as a location scout because I've never been there.
And that is probably the biggest challenge. It's every location they end up picking, then you need different people, different services.
You need different people. So
catering, all the bits and pieces in between.
Yeah, so we're trying to bring all of that together. We've started with really basic private locations. We've tested that with agencies. We're focusing heavily on the TVC market with the view that we want to head towards streaming and film as we grow forward. We've done a lot of research on our competitive set and the markets, and it's a big job, but I'm confident we've got the tech now to get where we need to get.
In terms of who is the competition in your space?
There's a lot. So surprisingly, when I started this, I tried to list with location companies. And there's a fair few Airbnb types, and most people use Airbnb, or they use Stays, or they use one of the other location companies. What I have found is that there's a lot of fabulous location scouts that have been doing it for a long time that have it in their back pocket. It's not database, and there's not optimized. So most of the great location scouts that I've worked with and dealt with and learnt from, I'm really keen always to meet and learn from different people that have been doing it a long time. You can't search their databases because they're private.
Yeah, they're all just in a back book. Yes.
Generally a BlackBerry too.
Yeah. The Blackberries, yeah.
I know. So really it's a challenging business, not because it's the most, I'm not suggesting for a moment it's the most sophisticated tech, because it's really search, discover and book, right? But trying to engage with the different sides to this marketplace has been incredibly challenging. And challenging in a good way, because whenever you're disrupting, obviously not everyone's going to be pleased, yeah? But at the same time, that's right, change. But at the same time, we are getting more and more repeat business. We're doing a lot of work with media companies. My background's media, so all my team are from advertising and media and production, and we're TV producers as well. So we know how it works, and it's really about proving the process and our system, and also then delivering on the tech. Our tech hasn't delivered, and fingers crossed in 3 weeks, boys, it will deliver.
Let's talk a little bit about tech, but there's a lot of
the exciting part.
That's the exciting part. But there's a lot of, from your perspective, I can see there's a lot of still manual work to get the locations, find the right people, and bring all this together in one place.
Sourcing all that data and taking photos so they're relevant and getting the right information. Like if you have to get someone to measure a bench.
Yeah, and look, there's been COVID gave us a really great break, to be honest with you. A step back and go, right, what is it that are we still on track to solve that problem? We pulled back from America because of COVID, which gave us a chance to then really review the back end and go, right, something's not, the search isn't working, or the mapping. The logistical data is critical to us. We're looking at geospatial technology to apply to our functionality. But more importantly, you need a really, really slick, easy search tool. And it doesn't exist right now. So we're very big on our tagging and our AI, and we're really big on this database, this idea of, being able to go location, photo shoot locations, Melbourne with gum trees, and it will give you a short list. So it's taken a lot of effort to sort of really look at how manual. I did imagine in the early days of the tech that it was going to be automated. Now I realise it's not going to be automated. We're absolutely 100%. Location scouts don't like doing automated stuff, but what we have, we're a hybrid marketplace. So about 30% of our business, I imagine, will end up being automated, which is your photo shoots and your sort of big retail. So retail groups that we're working with are, easy. They just know what they want. They know their budgets. They know how we work. They know our service. And we've also disrupted big time with we're very big on framing. We protect both sides of the marketplace. So we're there to layer a layer of integrity around how you treat a location, your insurances, making sure that it's left in the state to which you booked it, making sure that you get equally paid, fairly paid for what you're using the production for. Likewise, that the producer is protected as well from late cancellations and all those things. So we've built a lot of work. We've done a lot of work on that, and that's really, really showing in our growth in the last 6 months. That said, the technology hasn't held up, and to be completely honest with you, it's just been, honestly, I thought finding locations was difficult.
We all have our own challenges, don't we?
I don't give up, right? I'm one of those people that this is my third business, and I'm a fairly tenacious person, but this has nearly broken me. I have to be honest. I sit there going, you feel like you're right at the end and you're about to get delivered this amazing product to only find out it doesn't do anything they told you it was going to do. So I've been through 4 tech teams.
Oh, well. Yeah. Just on this product?
It seems like it, yeah. I like the fact that you can laugh at that because some people can't, because it becomes impactful to the business and the
reason I'm talking to you guys, the reason that I'm really getting out there to say the truth of the story is, you've got I think I spoke to a guy the other day. A guy rang me for a reference from my previous developers who did the wrong thing, who put me on the front page of their website. And I said to him, no, like seriously? But interestingly, this guy has got a great idea. And I said to him, he's young, and I just said, and I'm a lot older than him. I've been around the bush, and I've also run companies. So I think anything that we can impart on people building companies, the biggest challenge you will have is how much they tell you it's going to cost, how much it actually costs, and then it doesn't work. And what your expectation is on something that works, it's an unregulated industry in my view. It's a nightmare to deal in this industry because you do not know what you're getting. And the quality of the service, having run companies for 20 years, what we deliver is our service, right? And I worked in media for radio, and you've got a product that's up there and you've got accountability. I can't see the accountability on this because I can't read code. And if I had the brains to do it, I'd go and do a course on it, but I don't even have the patience to do that. But it's
take you a very long time to build it yourself too.
It would, but even, just thinking that you're making the right decisions and trying to hold people accountable to the dollars that you're spending, and then finding out, I had a group take off with the code at one point, and and I had paid all this money. So, and I'm smart, and I've been doing this a long time, but it's still got me. So that's why I feel like telling that story and being honest to people about those challenges. I think it needs regulation. I think the industry is just at it. In some instances I've heard, mine's not that much of a horror story, but I'm also self-funded. So I've wasted a lot of my own money. And, I feel people that have borrowed money to, it puts everything at risk because you can't trust the product that you're getting delivered. And I don't know how you solve that problem. That's not my problem. But I think talking about
it's not an easy thing to solve. It's very technical. No. So you have to be in the know to understand. Technical. Like you can gauge whether it delivers on its outcomes, but not how it's delivering them. So it's failing.
No.
I could tell you technically why it's failing and why it's not doing anything it's supposed to.
100%. And the other thing that I find is, I think because I'm in my late 40s, right? And I feel like when you've got this age group that is under 30, under 35, they talk a different language. And the old school language that I use, there's a lot of confusion. So it took me a long time to realise that, oh, hang on, I'm talking about that. And they're like, no, that doesn't mean that. I go, yes, it does. Well, that's just because I've grown up in a different, we didn't have that technology and we didn't apply. So it's just, there's some basic stuff that just doesn't exist. And I think, you go into it quite blind, because I can build a brand, I can build a successful product, and I've done that. But to make it work the way I want it to work is very difficult. And I look at this product as being quite simple. So that's been like a massive eye-opener. I get why people give up.
Question for you. Conveying the message of what you want, how have you found that conversation with your teams? Just sort of explaining it out, and how have you gone through that process to convey that message of what you're looking for?
So that's a really good question, Andrew, because I'm old school account service salesperson that didn't grow up on email. So we were always manual, and we're very detail orientated, we're organised, and everything is covered off in writing, just contact reports at meetings. So working initially on this product, I was just astounded at the lack of accountability in anything put into writing, and contracts that aren't fulfilled or signed, or, milestones that aren't being met. I'm a big milestone KPI person. I work really closely with my management team to implement, process and system. So dealing with developers, they don't work in process and system, and they don't work during the day, mostly. They don't work in the mornings. So that was
building
interesting.
Processes and systems, I should be able to work with them. The good ones anyway.
Yeah. But I think in fairness, I've had some great guys I work with, and the team we're working with at the moment is amazing. And it's interesting, right? So what I realise is it's a little bit like the advertising industry going backwards to the old way that we used to service, right? Media and advertising agencies. And I feel like it's doing that in tech at the moment, because when I'm in a room with my tech guys now, I've got an account director in there who's a suit. So my way of talking is to her, and they go, Kate, you're not making sense. You talk too fast, you this and that, and they'll interpret me. So that's really helpful. And that's come from obviously learning the hard way, but I think you have to build this stuff in teams. You cannot do it in a two-way conversation with a developer and a person like me who's a founder, because my idea also, I used to think that there was no accountability on it's my money and you're spending my money, and you just don't see that. But they don't, that their accountability is not on the dollar. It's on the delivery to what they think the interpretation is. And I found a lot that's really incredibly frustrating for me. And I think I'm a strong A-type personality. I work at 100 miles an hour, and they find it hard to work with me, and I find it hard to work with them. So I've brought in a team between us now, because it's just, that's not conducive to a good working environment for them either, But it's taken 3 years to find my feet on how to make it work. And it doesn't mean we still don't have, some of the same problems when you're onboarding, and, we've got, little things going on with the functionality. But now I'm more educated on how to work better with the developers so they understand my language and they understand me.
Something that we talk about a lot is all about clarity, and you mentioned interpretation in that in that sharing just then, and in terms of if one party's not interpreting what the other party's saying in the right way, we can go off and build something completely different, and then release the curtain, and it's completely opposite of what you expected. It doesn't serve you in the right way. So it's pivotal that you have
really
every
common.
party on the same page, that you're back testing, that you're repeating back. All right, this is exactly what we get.
Also try, it's interesting you say that. It just reminds me a lot of some of the really, really challenging times that I've had with it. And exactly that. So you sit there and you go through the wireframes and you're having this presentation and they're so excited and they're so technical, right? So they really blow my mind. I love these smart guys, right? So impressed with how hard they work and how incredibly smart they are. And then I get the product and it's nothing that I thought it would be because of that. But then when I make a change, they'll just go, okay, it's done. I'll go, no, can we talk about this? We need to talk about it. It's done. I've done it. It's deployed. So, the whole get onto a staging environment and stop pulling my website down. So there's just so many things that I was naive to. And I studied and read 1,000 books when I was sort of putting this together. It makes no difference. Like I still made every mistake in the book. And I still do, but I've got a really great team now who challenge me more, I suppose. One of the challenges with the developers with me is they won't say no to me, and I'm really strong-willed and, I'm really, this is what I want and you're going to give me this and I'm going to pay this. So when it doesn't happen, so I know I'd be difficult to work with you if you ask anyone with me, at the helm. So I think stepping into the brand role and moving away from the CEO role is probably a breath of fresh air for everybody to be able to focus on what they're good at,
I think from what you said earlier, where they're accountable to what they interpret as the delivery, not what you expect as the delivery.
That's right.
That's key from that interpretation problem.
But that's got to be, honestly, that's got to be on my side, right? So the way in which we brief these developer teams and the way in which we decide to build a technology has to be challenged and it has to be questioned and there has to be a process and there has to be an architecture around that.
Mm-hmm. It's a give and take. I wouldn't say it's on you. It's a partnership. You have to be able to work with a team because you're going to be working with them in a long-term relationship. You're going to be with them. So if you're going to have a product that's going to survive 20 years, you should have the same team working with you for 20 years ideally. But at the early stages, I was going to say, if they can't repeat back to you what you've explained to them, as a tip is what we tell people, then there's a problem already in your communication. That's just one thing that we try and tell people. This is a red flag if you're working with a team.
That's a really good point, because I never did that. And I have to say that one of the biggest lessons last year was realising that the person that was working on part of the product had no idea what we were talking about. And I went, oh, wow, maybe how did I not see that? How did I not identify that was a challenge, that was an issue? But again, working at 100 miles an hour says all the right things in a meeting. It gets me really excited. And then we go off and we go, oh, that's not right.
Yeah, that's like if you're building a house. Sorry, just say if you're building a house and you're saying, all right, I want timber floors. And they just go and do whatever they want. You're going to get the engineered floorboards, or you're going to get some nice Tasmanian oak or Vikash, or what are you going to get?
With that floor before you build it.
You mentioned a couple of things there, Kate, in your sharing. One was about brief and providing brief, and then expect them to do what you want. And I think when you frame it, and I have this conversation with a lot of people in the space, is if you're not tech, you should really not be briefing your tech providers on how we should put this thing together. That is not your...
That's so true.
That is not what the customer or client or person that's the creative or the person behind the idea in a business, that's not the role. I think what we've found in this space, it's all about co-creation. You have a business model, a business idea, some business expertise now. Then you need a tech person that has tech creative, tech ideas, tech now, so they can mold everything together.
This is my biggest challenge. I can't afford the tech person. I have been looking for a tech person for a long time. And we did decide that. But in hindsight, all the money I've wasted, I could have put into the tech person and avoided what I've done. So you're exactly right.
And then that person isn't, if you're talking directly to a developer, they're too low level. That's not who you need to be talking to. It needs to be...
In our business, we separate developers from from this from a conversation like this. Yeah, you need to separate.
So true. I've been looking. I really want a co-founder CTO person, and what I have found, because I have had a few conversations with people. So if there's anyone out there listening that's interested in this type of role, this is what I need. I need someone that understands the market. I'm a big one on the market that we're in is a really it's an old traditional market that doesn't have a lot of technology around it. We're doing some big work in blockchain and big work in AI that's going to transform. And the tech person, I really would love the tech person to be someone that's like, been in film or television or production or understands the problem we're solving. And often, again, this is my naivety, is the people that I've worked with they didn't even know what a location hire was, So I think that's also something, and that wouldn't apply to every business, but I think in my business, I would love someone that's had a background in understanding the market. They don't have to work in it. They just need to understand what is the problem we're solving. Media is the same. The media industry has, been slow to adopt technology. And I see a lot of people moving into the media space at the moment that are really adding that, that technology play into areas that we've been screaming for it for years. That, this is the same. We're all encompassed in this huge entertainment sort of media space. My part of it's one tiny dot on the radar. That it's a big space and it requires big thinking. And I realised, to your point, Andrew, that it shouldn't have been me briefing that.
I think I've got just something come up in just a sec in terms of when you share, just early stage question, when you originally shared your concept, was it about this is what I need, or did you share the business case, the business story, what the opportunity looks like, what the industry looks like? Is that something you took?
Good question. So I'm the opposite. So I build the brand in my head first. I wrote it up. I knew there was a problem. I researched it for 3 months, wrote it into a deck and took it straight to Hollywood, flew over, stayed with a mate of mine, went and met with 4 producers, and then went and evaluated 100 competitors globally and looked at every single thing they were doing right, wrong, and indifferent. And I'm still on exactly the same track. So I knew very early on, even when I read that deck the other day, I'm like, oh, my God, it's not that different to what I started with. But the application of that, I think probably me moving so quickly and the way I engage with people. So I wrote a brief for the website. And losing the last company website that we had and knowing how that happened and how much money we lost on that, which was millions, I'm like, I'm not going to do that again. Never going to do that again. I'm going to know everything there is to know about this one. And what I did was I went out and briefed half a dozen agencies by researching the agencies and looking at what they'd won and the types of products they were working on. And, it's still the same problem. So it's just I think, to your point, had I started with a CTO, probably wouldn't be having these conversations at the level I am. Big lesson.
It sounds like you've got a really good grip on the business model and what's required. I think
I know the business. Yeah, that's what I do have a grip on. The tech I don't. The tech is not my biggest gap.
So when you were briefing, were you going into like very low level detail on how they should be putting it all together, or were you helping them drive direction?
No, I'm just saying to them, I wanted to do this. Here's an example. I wanted to do this. I'm such a researcher and I'm such a thinker strategically and architecturally. I go, right, here's 6 sort of creative executions I think look really good. I think that we're moving away from this type of CMS from, when you're on board. Why are we doing that? Why do I have to keep entering all my details? And then by the time I kept building, technology was moving and mapping and all that. And I'd say, hey, guys, this is a really good one. What do you think about this? So I'd leave it with them to make the call. But, even that was a problem because I gave them too much autonomy. I'd give them the baseline and say, show me what you can do. And then I find out that half my product's been built overseas in a market I had no idea it was being built. I was being fed something that I wasn't, and they held on to it in the end. And then that went out. I went and did a huge launch in LA a couple of years ago, 2018, and went to launch the website, which we'd already paid for, and worked really closely with this team to find out that it fell over because the back end hadn't been attached. So effectively we ended up with two websites, a front end and a back end that didn't talk to each other. So, there was, but it's interesting. It wasn't that the brief, it wasn't that I was telling them how to build it because I didn't know how to build it. I was just saying, here's some examples of what doesn't work for me. Here's what I think as all the people I've spoken to in the market, this is what they want to see, and here's how I want it to work.
Were the agencies you're working with, were they, after you'd vetted them and you picked, say, your shortlist and you went to approach them, were they ones that had built something similar, or were they like web developers who then sort of were in over their heads and decided to try and take this on?
Don't know. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I worked with one of the top agencies in Australia, and that was the biggest disaster. I've worked with direct with some kind of consultants. That didn't work. I think universally, if there's one thing that's consistent, is they all say they can do it, and they all give you examples of their work. Whether they did that work or not, is sometimes questionable, I guess. And I suppose being in an industry like I'm in, where transparency is key to what we wanted to do, I didn't have that transparency. And I kept, the problem is I can't hold them accountable if I don't know what's going on, and that, they can just keep telling you what you want to hear.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, all this that you're telling us in this story is things we've heard time and time again with other startups and the firms that they've worked with.
I thought it was just, mate, I thought I was the silliest person in the whole market because I got into this situation again.
This is the whole reason, we're starting the podcast. So we, in October 2019, I was going to say, we had 5 businesses approach us who had lost $1 million in development collectively.
Yeah.
By picking the wrong teams and getting the wrong thing built.
Yeah. Do you know what I've been thinking about it because I had a friend lose money recently on something, and I looked at it and I said, well, how do we avoid doing this again? Do you have an industry body, or do you have a group of people from all sides of the market? You've got the health or the tech, the fintech, whatever it might be, and you have some sort of robust system that people can pass through. So someone can just say to them, hey, that doesn't look right. We're going to mentor you through this and we're going to take 5% of your business. That would have saved me $1 million.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with, say, so trying to regulate development space is that is the area that is innovating everything. Because it's a technology and things move, so it's very hard to regulate it and allow it to move at the pace it moves at.
Yeah.
But I agree, there are a lot of dodgy agencies out there. There are a lot of people that say they can do it and they can't actually deliver. There's people that will just take your money.
They're also, they're very unscrupulous. And, I've found at one point that someone sent me an incorrect document that had my code being pitched to another client. So there's no amount of confidentiality or, contracts that you can sign. Now, I don't even know what that means, but it wasn't good because all my stuff was on that document, all of my IP. And I thought, God, I've paid all that money. How do you avoid that? Well, I didn't want to expose we're in the middle of something big. And I'm like, more for me, but how do you stop that? How do I stop that? Because I've got, people say to me all the time, you should have people internal. Well, to build the team internally, I need, and the challenge is in this space, you spend so much money trying to get it right. And then where do you put your money? Do you get the 250K CTO, or do you put it into building the database, which is what we need, because you need listings before you can actually go to market? And do you outsource your developers because all of them cost money, and who's going to look after them because I can't read code? So there's no point with them sitting next to me.
I think that's the biggest issue that most people have in this world. It's they don't understand the output. And I think we used it at the start of the conversation. Building a house came up. You can see what a house looks like and get a feel if the thing's going to fall down.
Yeah.
And you can that physically, tangibly have a bit of a look and a feel and understand where it's at. But when you're looking, if you don't understand code, you don't know how it's been structured, if it's going to hold up at scale. You have no real clue as to if they picked the right technology to build this in.
You don't know. This is the other thing, it's the early stage stuff where you just go, oh my God, and even investor conversations and conversations with consultants who want to charge you $30,000 to evaluate your code, to then tell you, oh, you can do this, or you're on the wrong CMS, or, too late to find that out.
If someone says to $30,000 to evaluate code, there's a big problem there. It takes. I hand something over to Anthony. It takes him 2 hours to tell me if this thing's a piece of garbage or not. It's not that difficult to understand.
You can do a quick pass, and you don't have to look at every single line.
That's But how do you, when you're a young startup company and you've just put a mortgage on your house and you're putting in $150,000 just to start, just to get a prototype in place, and you find out, you're told this is the way it should be built, to only find out 7 months later that was not the case. Meanwhile, you spend another $150 on it. So, and then you're chasing yourself, and then you're nervous, and then you're making emotional decisions. So
I think there's a happy medium here. You mentioned get a CTO on board. Some advisors around you would be great, especially from at least a top level, just overseeing some decisions or just guiding you down a bit of a path and asking.
Yeah, I need a tech person. I need a tech. We've had people come and go, and rightly or wrongly, and again, tech advisors in, I don't even know how to evaluate them, because I have had a couple of tech advisors, and clearly that hasn't worked, has it? But that said, I've got a couple at the moment. I've got some really good senior people that have come in, and, we're sort of at this, we're about to start scaling, and we're getting some really good traction. So, finally things are turning around. But, as I said, the journey could have saved a lot of heartache and a lot of money. Had I did that, had I got the CTO, CTO would be the first person. I'd sack me and put a CTO in.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting when you say that, because everyone's afraid to spend the money. But
oh, my God, so was I. That's why I didn't do it. But now, the amount of money I've wasted, that could have been saved by having a CTO co-founder. So, I only know that now. But also I think I'm sort of, when I say CTO, in my view, I've done a lot of research on the CTO space, and I really wanted someone that was innovative, that was really forward on the really on the ball with technology and the trends and the pace at which it's changing. AI and image recognition technology and 360. There's a lot of stuff I want to do, and I do a lot of research. So I'm like, I really want to do that. I really want to do that. Like, one of the things I really want to do is you scan your photo and it tells you where to find that location. But how do you evaluate that a CTO that also has a really solid business background with a financial hat on? Because you can do all this stuff, which everyone tells me, stop, you can't afford that, because all I want to do is go there, but I can't afford it. I've got to break it right down to the basics, to get the basics right, to prove the product and then scale.
I think it's a unique mix to find the person that has what you're sort of asking for, because the traditional route would be you start out as a developer, you become like team lead, senior developer, then you become potentially an analyst and architect, and then go to a CTO at some point.
I feel like my CTO needs to run a business.
It needs to be from a startup.
Yeah, maybe I'm asking too much.
I think you mentioned a little bit there. And I think it's probably some takeaways people can take from this conversation is you can have a big picture in mind, but that big picture doesn't mean you have to build it all at once too. I think we need to evaluate from a feature set and a delivery perspective the value and the ROI you're going to get on this stuff too, and that's what you might mean put the financial hat on, because yes, a tech will say they can build it, but is that actually going to deliver a lot of value to your users, to your product, to your business? That needs to be assessed. And
that's what my CEO is, she's been with me for a year now, and the team now are very, very accountable to the dollar and what it's going to mean. So it might be nice to put that feature in, Kate, but if it's not going to deliver me revenue, it's not going in. And I can scream and yell till the black cows come home, but I've agreed that she can make those decisions so that we can get this thing off the ground. But it's interesting because you're right. I would like to do everything at once. And, I have a tendency to go really big, and breaking it down has really made it far more manageable as a business, but also as a technology. So the tech has to apply to the business that we're building, the features. So at a very basic level, we just need search, shortlist and book at the moment. That's it. The rest of it, your image gallery tools and all those additional things can come later because they're not going to impact the revenue right now.
Yeah, and you can forever be sitting there tweaking and trying to perfect that idea. We've had clients do that on projects as well.
I'm bad at that, Anthony. Let me tell you, that might team scream at me.
It's not easy to learn because you've got an investment in it and you've got an emotional attachment because it's your business and your idea. So it's hard to say, all right, enough is enough. Let's get it out. When you want to go, all right, if I just add this little thing, this might be the thing that makes it succeed, or this might be the little thing that gets it across the line, or this one, or this one. But that can never stop as well.
Also, I think on that point that recently there's been some new people come in and have a look, and some of the come to Jesus moments, you're like, oh, wow. Because, new people that have never been around the business before bring things up and I go, how did I miss that? I can't believe I missed that because I'm so close to it now. I have no objectivity. And so I have to really let people, trying to delegate and let the team make more decisions. They're using the product every day, and enabling them to have the autonomy to help get it to the place where they can use it because they're using it more than I am.
I think new voices are important in any business, new perspectives. We can all get sucked into a little bubble and be within our own four walls, and just bringing in different opinions along the journey can add so much value, and just a different appetite and different experience.
And I think people always say this, but I'm terrible at it. I've realised, everyone said Facebook wasn't amazing when it launched, and I'm terrible at that. But also just the way it looks, like, that photo doesn't look quite right on the front page. Can you change that? And that's 6 hours of work. I'm like, but I don't like that photo. It's got a pink hue on it. Can you remove that photo? So they must look at me and think, but it's, I do get caught up in things. So again, I've had to really step back from that and go, okay, what, when I'm paying the bills each month, what's all this additional work? Well, that's you, Kate. That's you changing your mind.
Yes. Now, in terms of a perfect space, obviously you've been playing around with tech and trying to get this right for a long time. What's the vision for the business? Where do you want to take this in the next 3 to 5 years? What are you trying to achieve within the context of
we want to be the Google of location scouting, so the go-to. So we're going to license it in each market. It was interesting from the very, very day that I wrote it up, I wanted to license the brand in all the other territories. So we've picked our 20 markets in the US, our key production markets. We've picked New Zealand, Canada, and the UK, and France, and Budapest, which are all the key production markets around the world. Focused heavily around filming longer term. It's really around, we want, Netflix and Stan and Prime to use us as the go-to, and we build a direct relationship with them. So the bigger plan really is to have, we'll create the technology and the marketing engine. We'll run that out of Melbourne, and we'll license it in each market, and each of those markets become the expert in those markets. And I imagined it to be, location. Realtors in America are really interested, so we've spoken to several of those, and old location scouts that are manual in tradition. But I think what it'll end up being, salespeople, film people that are in the industry that just go, hey, this looks awesome. And all they do is just turn on the tech and then start onboarding. So, yeah.
exciting where you're going too, and I think that can be a challenge too. Being in a founder in a business, that's the vision, that's the direction, but this is where we're at. It's one step at a time type thing. I think one of the biggest challenges you have too is it's just not a tech play. You still need people on the ground pulling all this together and the right people, right? So there is a bit of a mix here, and it becomes what comes first. And I think, you need to obviously bring the people on board to drive the actual
If you think of it, it's similar to how Google Maps is. That's not a purely tech play either, because they have to have cars and people driving around capturing photos and everything for you. So.
Correct. And I think it's been challenging talking to tech people about that. And you're right that, the big scalable unicorns these days are all about automation. I feel like, and, correct me if you disagree, but I really feel like a lot of those huge automated technologies have also lost their way with customer service in many instances. And my experience with, dealing with some of those big tech, it's great, but you end up going, hang on, we're not even getting responses here. So my intention from the very outset was to make sure that people were able to connect and be serviced and build the technology in a marketplace that enabled people to still be serviced. So a little bit like I look back at my radio days. I was in radio for a long time as a salesperson, and we had really small team looking after multiple millions of dollars worth of business. And I see the same kind of the same model for this, that, there's only a certain amount of agencies in each market. There's only a limited amount of films and TV productions, and you don't need a massive team because the technology will do most of the grunt work. What you do need is the ability to speak to someone, the ability to have a conversation, the ability to have someone. So we've built chatbots and lots of helping people through the funnels. I've done a lot of work with the communication structure around the business and being able to really refine that so that we're not having those conversations all the time. But we certainly will enable that for the top 20% of the business that need to be serviced. You're not going to have the top level executives looking for locations for 30 films in the next 12 months in Asia Pacific on your technology. They'll want to talk to someone. So we feel like that's where that service model will come in. Like in any business, if you're a top level going in at Atlassian, you're going to get serviced. So we've really segmented. Our audiences are very segmented. So there is a real automated area down the bottom, but there is also a membership area at the top.
Yeah, it's good to see that you're extremely clear on how you should approach who your market is, what you're going for, and just the stumbling block of getting there.
Yeah. Look, it's I think with my last business that we lost the website, it fell over. The biggest lesson I had was that I didn't challenge that and didn't get involved and didn't test it and didn't look at the data. I listened to them and they were the experts. So I went, great, it's going to look amazing, and it didn't work. This one, I probably overdo it a bit, but I'm also, when it's your money and, I've got 3 kids, I've got to put food on the table and, I need to feel comfortable that I'm not putting my team at risk, and, I don't want the product to fall over. And if I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to delegate something I don't know. And that's the biggest challenge I've had with the developers is I'm delegating something I don't know and I can't do anything about it. I can't fix that because I don't know how to recode. So it's always going to be that challenge, until I get my feet to go.
And that's where that co-creative word comes in, because delegating something you don't know is quite difficult in any industry. It doesn't matter what it is, right? So I think it's not easy, but we need the people that understand the business. And I think you mentioned it earlier, understanding the direction, the business, where it's going. So you can actually mold the tech and the business together, because it is all encompassing. It's not just technology here, do this job. It's not about that.
It's really interesting. It's interesting on that in Australia, so just some basic stuff it's just quite interesting watching the technology catch up in this space of, search and display is in many different areas, real estate and stays and short-term vacation rental, hotel bookings and so forth. So it's really, people know how it works, yet you cannot search for a studio in Australia. You can go to 100 different places and get that information, but there's no uniformity on that, So just at a basic level, you go, right, the tech isn't that hard. It's not, this tech exists. So the challenge really is, how do you apply that? Like you were saying before, Anthony, how do you apply that to solving the problem in your sector, in your industry? And for my industry, and I've spoken to many players about this because studios is a big one, all they want is the ability to find out, where can I get soundproofing studio in Melbourne, 10 minutes from the CBD, and where can I find a cyclorama that is in the same studio? How hard can that be? Do you know how hard that is?
It's crazy to think.
It's crazy in this day and age to think that doesn't exist. And it's not just it doesn't exist. It does exist in many different forms, but it doesn't exist in just being able to compare apples with apples in a uniform way to see a price and go, bang, book, can I ring that person? It's not, So it's funny how you balance that. It's a simple proposition, but it's not that easy to solve.
I think the technology shouldn't be your problem. But from sitting back here, I don't think the technology should be the problem. I think it's more the data collection.
It's not the problem. It's been, but it has been.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find that it's more, from what I'm seeing, it's more collecting the data, bringing everyone on the same page on the journey, getting all the information in the right place, and then it's a searchable database.
I think, you're right. And it's been bad decisions in that sense, going back to the CTO. But I think to your point is the challenge is educating the industry that this is a better, faster, more pragmatic, easier process to use than how you're currently doing it.
Yeah, and that's generally the challenge for most startups disrupting is education is the key thing.
Yeah. For sure.
Pegs down on that education and doing things differently. I think everyone's used to just picking up the phone and talking to Joe down the road around how do I get access to this or whatever they do in their part.
We get it every day. Every day. Oh no, we don't do it that way. And it's a really fine line to tell them, well, you shouldn't be doing it that way, or would you consider looking at this way of doing it? Or why would we? We've always done it this way. But that's what technology does. Technology saves you time and saves you money. It still doesn't necessarily click.
Kate, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to understand a little bit about A Perfect Space and your direction and vision for the business, your journey thus far. And I think
thank you.
There's plenty of information for people to take away from this. Technology is not an easy road to walk, especially if you're not technology not savvy is not the word, but don't have that background from a delivery of technology.
Educated in programming.
It's a very different beast. And getting the right people on board. You shouldn't have to be a
programmer, really.
No.
You're running a business. You're not programming.
Mm-hmm. It'd be really good to have a community that has people just sitting in a room going, right, it's like speed dating where you can go and talk to a CTO and say, do you reckon I should do, what do you think I should do now?
So it might be your next business, A Perfect CTO.
I'm done. This is it. I'm going to get this one right. Thanks, guys. It's been great to chat to you guys.
And we'll share a little bit about Perfect Space if anyone's interested in this particular piece of technology and want to learn more about what you're up to. So thanks a lot, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
See you later.